I was loyal. I gave them everything. My time, my trust, even my heart. But the moment I became inconvenient, they cut me out like a virus. What they didn't understand is this: betrayal doesn't end a story. It rewrites it. This isn't about rage. This isn't about drama. It's about control, strategy, precision. The kind of revenge that doesn't shout, it waits. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever dreamed of revenge? Or maybe you've already done it. Not the loud kind, the silent kind, the kind that takes time and hits when they least expect it. This is how I was betrayed by the people I trusted most, and how I built something stronger, smarter, and colder until their world came crashing down in daylight. Drop a comment below. What country are you watching from? Let's see where this global army of silent winners is tuning in from. Settle in. This isn't fiction. It's a blueprint. For a while, I thought I had everything figured out. At 29, I was working as a senior analyst at Callahan Exports, a mid-sized international logistics company that had its hooks in everything from shipping to customs brokerage. It wasn't Google or Tesla, but it was steady, respected, and growing. I wasn't just a cog in the machine. I was one of the architects behind its recent success. But what made it feel like more than just a job was the people. I was dating Lily Callahan, the founder's only daughter. We met at a holiday gala 2 years ago, bonded over our mutual hatred for shrimp cocktails, and the rest was history. Her brother Mark became my closest friend, and her father, Gerald Callahan, practically treated me like the son he never had. Family dinners, inside jokes, even vacations. I wasn't just dating Lily. I was part of their world. I worked hard, brought in clients, streamlined operations, and tripled one of our key accounts in 6 months. People took notice. There was talk of me being moved into an executive strategy role. Lily encouraged me to propose soon. Everything felt aligned, until the rug was ripped out from under me. It started subtly. Meetings I used to be part of were suddenly happening without me. Mark stopped replying to weekend texts. Lily became cold, distant. And Gerald, he started nitpicking my work, errors that didn't exist, delays that weren't my fault. Then came the audit. I was called into HR. Apparently, an anonymous complaint accused me of financial misconduct, fake invoices, altered travel expenses, misuse of a corporate card. I laughed at first. Surely, this was some mistake. But it wasn't. The tone wasn't questioning. It was accusatory, like they were reading a script they'd rehearsed. That afternoon, I was fired. No severance, no explanation, just a cold, legal termination letter. Lily didn't even call. Mark sent one text. It's better if we don't talk. Gerald, I saw him once more, passing me in the parking lot as I loaded a box of my things into the trunk of my car. He didn't make eye contact. That night, I opened LinkedIn to update my status. But I didn't need to. Gerald had already posted, "We regret to inform our community that James Thornton has been terminated from Callahan Exports due to a breach of internal trust and ethical guidelines. We remain committed to integrity and transparency." I wasn't just fired. I was framed, exiled, and branded as a thief. Everything I had built was gone. But that's the thing about being left for dead. Sometimes, the dead don't stay buried. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. It's strange how fast people disappear when your name gets dragged through the mud. Friends I had known for years suddenly stopped returning my messages. Clients I had helped build from the ground up switched allegiances without so much as a phone call. I became a ghost in my own life, unemployable, unreachable, and worst of all, disbelieved. My savings vanished quickly. Rent, legal consultations, the basic cost of surviving in a world where I was now considered guilty by default. I tried to get a job elsewhere, but every application was met with silence. One HR rep was honest with me. "We Googled you," she said. "Your name is attached to some concerning statements. It's too risky." It wasn't just that I had lost my job. I had lost my name. I stayed inside most days. Curtains drawn. Meals skipped. I lost 15 pounds in 2 months. My phone stayed silent, except for the occasional spam call. Every so often, I would scroll through social media, watching from a distance as Lily posted photos of weekend getaways and family brunches, smiling next to Mark and Gerald, all pretending like I never existed. That silence, it broke something in me. And yet, somewhere deep in the noise of depression, there was a whisper. If they can erase you, you can erase them. I started taking notes. Late at night, I would sit with a notebook and sketch out everything I remembered about the Callahan business: vendors, suppliers, client names, shipping routes, invoice structures. I still had access to a few old emails. I had worked closely with their systems for years. I knew them better than most of their board members. It wasn't revenge yet. Not exactly. At first, it was survival. A reason to stay awake. A purpose. But it didn't take long before purpose turned into planning. And planning turned into obsession. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to just clear my name. I wanted to destroy theirs. I wanted to build something so undeniable, so powerful, that it would make the Callahans irrelevant. They thought they could erase me. So I would rewrite the story. From the ashes. In silence. And when I returned, I would make sure they heard every word. I packed what little I had left into a single duffel bag and left the city in the middle of the night. No goodbyes. No announcements. No digital trail. I deleted all my social media accounts, bought a prepaid phone, and rented a cheap studio in a small town no one had ever heard of. There, I started over, quietly, invisibly. The first few weeks were about survival. I took odd jobs, delivering groceries, stocking shelves at a hardware store, tutoring high school kids in economics. No one knew my real name. I went by Daniel. It was a name that felt temporary, like the new life I was building. But every spare moment outside those gigs was dedicated to building something much bigger. I used the little money I had to buy a refurbished laptop. With it, I started researching the logistics industry inside and out, not just Callahan exports, but their competitors, their weaknesses, and the gaps they weren't filling. Then I found it. A perfect entry point. There was a surge in smaller businesses needing independent freight management solutions. Faster, cheaper, and more transparent than what traditional firms like Callahan could offer. The big guys were bloated and slow, and smaller startups were struggling to meet demand. That's where I could win. I registered a new company under an alias, Orion Strategic Partners. I paid for everything in cash or crypto. No one could trace it back to me. Orion began as a consulting firm. I offered strategic advice to small import-export clients, ones who'd never qualify for Callahan's attention. I offered them value, speed, loyalty, everything Callahan once claimed to stand for. Within 3 months, I had my first 5 clients. By month 6, I had 15. I never advertised. Word spread quietly, like a rumor people didn't want to admit they believed. Then came the first big name, a mid-sized firm in LA that had just cut ties with Callahan after a botched shipment left them with $200,000 in losses. I didn't just offer them a solution. I offered them retribution. With every new client I acquired, I didn't just grow Orion. I chipped away at the foundation of Callahan exports. They didn't know it yet, but their empire was crumbling from within. And I wasn't done. Not even close. By the end of Orion's first year, I had 37 clients, a small but skilled remote team, and a list of Callahan's internal operations that would make their lawyers sweat. But I wasn't satisfied with slow erosion. I wanted a landslide. I contacted a whistleblower site and anonymously submitted internal Callahan documents, ones Lily herself had signed. Misused funds, shell invoices, environmental violations. I knew where the bodies were buried because I had helped dig a few of the holes, under orders. The news spread like wildfire. Trade publications, niche industry blogs, and even a mid-sized financial podcast picked up the story. Callahan's stock plummeted. Major clients froze accounts. One supplier filed a lawsuit. Another demanded full audit access. The board called an emergency meeting. Meanwhile, I had been working with one of Callahan's ex-employees, a bitter logistics coordinator named Elena, who had been fired for poor attitude. She still had access to one of their secondary portals. Through her, I watched them panic in real time. It was satisfying, but I wasn't done. I made my next move more personal. Through a private investor, who didn't know who I really was, I made an offer to acquire Callahan's failing East Coast branch. They were desperate to keep it afloat. The deal was laughably cheap. The name on the paperwork was a shell company. The signature was forged by a proxy. But the victory was real. For the first time, part of the Callahan business now belonged to me. 3 weeks later, I fired Mark Callahan from the division he once bragged about building. Lily tried to fight it. She sent emails, legal threats. She even showed up at one of the offices I had never stepped foot in, demanding answers. She didn't get any, because I was still invisible. But not for long. The day I revealed myself wasn't dramatic. No grand press conference. No viral video. Just a simple, signed letter sent to the Callahan Board of Directors, the legal department, and the entire executive staff. The letter was typed and precise. It outlined how Orion Strategic Partners had legally acquired the East Coast division of Callahan Exports. It included details on how I, James Thornton, was the founder and CEO of Orion. And it ended with a line that read, "Justice delayed is not always justice denied." I didn't expect a response, but I got one. Fast. Gerald himself requested a meeting. For the first time in almost 2 years, he acknowledged I was real, that I mattered. We met at a neutral downtown office building. Clean, glass-walled, sterile. He walked in like he still owned the world, but I could see it in his eyes. Confusion, fear, and something new, respect. "James," he said, extending a hand. I didn't take it. "You lied," I said. "You framed me. You destroyed everything I had." He started to talk about how it was a misunderstanding, that HR acted rashly, that he was misled. I let him talk, and then I slid a folder across the table. Inside were emails, screenshots, voice memos. Elena had helped me retrieve everything. It was irrefutable. "You didn't just destroy my life. You committed corporate fraud. Your daughter signed off on most of it. And Mark, he embezzled thousands for his gambling debt." Gerald's face turned white. I leaned in. "You didn't just underestimate me, Gerald. You created me." He knew what was coming. I had filed whistleblower complaints with regulatory bodies and the IRS. The lawsuits were already forming. The media was picking it up again. This time, with names. Lily, Mark, Gerald. Each of them had betrayed me, and each of them would be buried in the rubble of their own deceit. As the fallout escalated, Callahan Exports Board forced Gerald into early retirement. Lily was named in SEC investigation. Mark's finances were subpoenaed. They tried to sell what was left of the company, but the name was poisoned. No one wanted to touch it. Meanwhile, Orion was booming. My clients stayed loyal. The team expanded. I was finally, undeniably back in control. But revenge isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet, heavy, final. I stood outside the old Callahan headquarters one last time, watching movers haul out what remained. The logo had already been peeled from the front door. And then, just as I was about to leave, a woman approached me. Lily. She looked tired, worn down, not the glowing executive I remembered. "You did this," she said. "You destroyed us." I didn't deny it. "You destroyed me first." There was a long pause. "I didn't know they were going to pin it all on you," she said. "I didn't think they'd go that far." "Then you weren't paying attention." She looked like she wanted to argue, or maybe apologize. But in the end, she just said, "Was it worth it?" I didn't answer, because revenge doesn't answer questions. It rewrites them. As I walked away, I left behind the building, the past, the pain. But I carried the story, and now you know it, too. Some stories end with closure. Others begin with silence, and end in fire. If this one made you feel something, like, share, and subscribe bell for weekly reminders. Not for me, but for every quiet soul planning their own comeback. And if you've ever been wronged, tell your story below. Because sometimes the best revenge is being heard. From Revenge-ActionTV.